podcast family. Welcome to another episode of Black Women Be Well. I am your host, Jennifer Tomlinson, and today we are doing another rendition of Stuff I Wish My Mom Told Me, a special segment where we interview prominent women within their field, and we ask them to share life lessons that they've learned the hard way. And today we are so lucky to have a very special guest with us, Miss Vanessa Echols. Vanessa Echols is a television journalist right here in sunny Central Florida. She's a news anchor for WFTV and host of her own podcast entitled Colorblind, Race Across Generations. Welcome to the show, Miss Echols.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you.
I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. And like I mentioned already, you have your own podcast. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us some more about it?
Well, you know a little bit about it because you were one of my guests. So thank you for allowing me to plug the podcast.
For sure.
The podcast, as you mentioned, is Colorblind, Race Across Generations. And it's just an open forum where we talk about issues of race. You know, we've talked about microaggression. We've talked about why it's so hard to talk honestly about race, how to talk about it without, getting punched, how to talk about it without wanting to punch someone else.
Right.
So just a variety of subjects. We've had, young people talking about how their issues about race differ from what their parents were taught. We had an episode recently, our most recent one, with a woman who is here in Orlando, but she was the first Black student to graduate from Gainesville High School.
Oh, wow.
So she talked about that experience. She was there from 64, 65. But she talked about the fact that she was a victim of physical violence.
Wow.
So much so that she had to go to the doctor, get stitches in her head. So serious
And, we think about that as history, but she's still here.
That's not, 64, 65. Like, that has not been that, too long ago. So that's, it's just, we just talk about how race affects our lives because it's there. People want to act like, people say, why do you call it colorblind? Because we're not. I'm like, I know it's the opposite of that. Race is a part of our lives, what we do, who we are, but it is all about how we react and act to those issues. So see color, just don't judge people by it. That's the bottom line.
Your platform really allows people to learn the vocabulary of having these types of conversation and learning about the subject matter so that we can see it for what it is and, talk about it in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
I loved, I haven't caught up, I'll be honest with you, but the last episode I just listened to was, you had a panel of young people.
Yes.
All Generation Zs. First, I want to just say how intelligent these young people
Oh, they were fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, they had the articulation I never had at that age. And the ability to be that self-aware, I was truly impressed. But it was listening to their stories and how they are experiencing, living in the world within their own racial constructs and dealing with other races. And it was kind of surprising that not much has changed from when I was a kid either.
That was, I don't know, I guess it was a little disheartening because I look at them and I'm like, you have always been in environments in school, particular, where your schools were integrated, so to speak. This was not, you did not grow up in a time where there was, the black school and the white school. You grew up when there was
diversity.
In your school.
Seeing things in TV and different representation.
And then they talk about these issues and I'm like, wow, that's what I went through many years ago.
Yeah.
So
it was so great that you were able to showcase
do.
That because I didn't know that how much work we still have to do.
Yeah, we do. A lot of work to do.
And thank you for inviting me on for the discussion on racial allies. That was a great talk that we had, I feel like. And I just hope people learn from that episode too, like how they can support other races.
Yes.
And not the golden rule, let me treat you the way I want you to treat you, but the platinum rule. Platinum rule, how can I treat you the way you want to be treated?
Yes. That's it. That's what it's all about. That's the bottom line. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's transition. I would like to really acknowledge something that happened yesterday. America really is in a state of mourning right now with the passing of Kobe Bryant. For those that are listening to this episode, it will have been several days, but we're literally recording this the day after. I think it's even less than 24 hours. I felt like it was important for us to talk about this, and I actually reached out to Vanessa Echols ahead of time, letting her know that I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on this because I was so heavily triggered by the passing of him. When I saw the news, I had I'm dealing with my own loss with 4 close members of my family group and my friend group dying within the last 2 weeks.
Oh. And that's a heavy burden.
Very heavy. And I've been emotionally managing it very well. You know, I'm at an age where I know that heart work stuff I need to do to stay heart healthy, emotionally healthy, and, you know, showing up to work and writing and reflecting. And, you know, I'm religious, so I pray, talking to my mom. She's my confidant. But that, I don't know, it's just that happened. And it was like a trigger, like, boom. I could no longer manage yesterday. And I didn't realize what had happened to me yesterday. I immediately imploded. I don't know if you relate to this, but I know probably other people can relate to this, where I just cannot get out the bed. I had like a list of things I wanted to get done. None of it got done. And I didn't realize I was imploding on myself till about 4:30, and I realized I was still in the bed. And I said, okay, you know what this is, Jennifer. And so I immediately tried to get myself together, and I prepared for the evening and got some stuff together. I said, all right, tomorrow I'm going to get it together. And so today I've done the complete opposite. I've been overworking, and I know now it's a distraction.
Yes.
I didn't know that, though, until someone close to me. And one of my episodes, the season finale for season 1, we talked about building your tribe. So one of my close colleagues said, you know what, Jennifer? You might want to just
dial it back a bit.
Dial it back because you're doing the opposite. Because I actually confided in her and told her how I was feeling. So for our listeners, you know, this podcast is all about health and wellness. And it's so vital to know what your triggers are. And you don't know them until you reflect. So whatever your reflective process is, whether it's journaling or mindful walks or you have a therapist, just keep that in mind. Do that kind of heart work and watch your reactions to things. So I, within 24 hours, imploded and exploded. But I'm self-aware now. I had to learn the hard way to be able to see and figure out what that looks like for me. And I know what I need to do now. And in a lot of ways, this podcast is journaling for me. It's verbal journaling. So I just wanted to put that out there and to send thoughts and wishes to all those that were impacted by that horrible tragedy.
I think we all were. It was just, you know, people always overuse the term, I'm shocked. But it was shocking.
Yeah.
It just, you know, and then if you look at social media, everyone posting like, please don't let this be true. You know, let it turn out to be not him, or that it was, you know, he walked away. And then when the reality sets in, it's heartbreaking and it's shocking too.
It just humanizes everyone. That's how shocking it was, because you don't think something like that would happen to someone like him, right? Like a random tragedy like that. And to know that his daughter was with him, the word you use is absolutely accurate. It was shocking. Yeah.
A friend of mine has always said death is the great equalizer. And so in a situation like this, you think, someone who you think has everything in the world, fame, fortune, you know, talent, everything. But then something that we perceive as random has happened to him and rocked his family's world.
The equalizer.
Yeah.
It is. Well, it certainly triggered me. And for those that it might have triggered as well, I hope that advice just kind of helps you through this process, because it was shocking. Yeah. And if you're dealing with loss or grief, just keep those thoughts in mind. You have to do your heart work just as much as we do our head work. You know, we're so caught up with making sure that we are licensed and credentialed and we're best at our jobs, and we forget to spend time on our emotional and heart work. And it's just as important. And
heart work is hard work sometimes too.
The hardest.
Yes.
It's the most complicated.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. So let's transition into a nice a deep conversation about failures. This is a hindsight 2020 episode where we might have learned more now than what we saw at the time. So, Miss Vanessa Echols, can you think of a time where you failed and
there
that you learned
have been so many? I mean, seriously, I'm like, well, which one do I talk about? I think about just the entire process of trying to build a career, even one that I think people might look at as being successful. I'm like, oh boy, there were so many failures along the way. And I think for me, it was just a fear of, can I do this? Can I do it well? And then sometimes letting opportunities pass me by because of fear. And to me, that has probably been the greatest failure in my life. Just knowing that there were some things I could have done and probably done them well, but just this fear of, what if I fail? Well, when opportunities pass you by because you're afraid of failure, you've already failed.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I think,
I don't know that people would look at you, someone that's really an expert at what they do, and you're at the peak of, what people would achieve to be. I don't know that people would have thought that you might have you have let opportunities pass you by. I would have, like, if I was a 22-year-old intern, I would have said, oh, she did everything right.
No,
I want to be her. Tell me what you did.
Yeah. You probably could learn more about what I didn't do, frankly. I think that probably, interns are people wanting to come into the business. Young people ask me that. But now that I think about it, probably the greatest lessons I could teach them would be what I consider the failures, opportunities that did pass me by, things I didn't go for whatever reason. I think about even my first job. I graduated and I went back home because I didn't have a job. And so my roommate was the daughter of a doctor. And so she didn't have a job either, but she was like, hey, I'll just go back home. And I was like, oh, that's how you work it. Because I was first generation college student. Yeah. So I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just go back home and wait for this wonderful job to come along. And my parents were like, yeah, we're not doctors. So you need to get a job. Grown people in our house work.
Right.
And so I was very offended that I was like, okay, nobody else around here has been to college. Nobody else in the family's gone to college. I've gone to college. And now you expect me to get a job. I'm like, I'm trying to get one.
You were hurt by that.
I was hurt and offended.
You should be proud I made it this far.
That was my point. So I was like, I'm waiting on the job to come along. And so finally my dad had a discussion. He's like, yeah, you need to work. And your mom and I talked about this. You need to get a job. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll fix them. So then I started applying for, like, director of the hospital, jobs that I knew I was not going to get. And then pretty soon they wised up to that, and they were like, no, you need to get a job. And so then he said, I will get you an application where I work, which was a factory.
Huh.
I was like,
You were offended at times, too, right?
I was like, no, I am very, very grateful for your factory job because it allowed me to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I was like, I didn't. And for all the factory workers, I give it up to you, the child of a factory worker. What you do is important. But I was like, that's some hard work.
It is.
Standing on your feet all day and heavy lifting and all that. I was like, that is too hard.
Yeah.
So then I just started to apply for jobs, everywhere and everywhere. And the first job offer came along in a tiny television station in Jackson, Tennessee. It turned out to be a great experience for me. I didn't really want to go there, but I took that job because I thought another one might not come along, and then I'm going to have my parents nagging me every doggone day. And it turned out the day I started the job there, television station where I wanted to work called that very same day, but I'd already started the other job.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, well, dang, like how life works out.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, you just don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Do you think you would have done anything differently instead of coming home? Like, what was the...
Oh, I had to come home because when you don't have a job and there's rent to be paid and you don't have any money, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, right,
like,
right.
let me go to the safe space where I don't have to. Yeah. So there was not really an option there.
You mentioned before that you've let opportunities pass you by out of fear. Could you talk a little bit about the types of fear you experienced?
I think it was just a fear of what if I go there and I can't, that I'm not going to do well. Because along the way, people would say to me, like, you should be sending out your work to, like, big-time stations in, like, New York and Los Angeles and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I don't know. What if I get there and then I don't do well? And then, it's like being a 5-year-old. Then everybody's going to make fun of me because I failed,
Yeah.
And, looking back on it now, it's like, go there. If you fail, you might. But at least you tried. And you might go there and you might be a great success.
I think this is, and thank you for being authentic and honest, because this is something that young people don't ever see. They'll see the CEO or the person that made it, but
Absolutely.
don't understand how often they fail to get there. And so the irrational fear that a young person will have at 19 that they haven't made it yet, not understanding that it takes ups and downs. It's
Absolutely.
a mountain and valley journey before you even get anywhere. So for you to share your story, it's really going to help a lot of people understand it's a process.
It is a process.
And what I wonder too is, did you experience that same fear, different pockets of your life, or was it all kind of like in the same age range? Or
I think probably the same age range. And it's funny because I have friends who say they're more fearful as they get older. I think I am the opposite now. I'm like, there's very little that scares me at this point in my life because I can look back on all the things and I'm like, plus, 98% of the stuff that we fear doesn't even come true. And so then it's like, why was I so afraid, of that?
I'm sick of having therapy on my show.
No, that really is that. When you look at like, boy, I was so afraid that, yeah.
So, I think I've always been fearful. And I think it was one of the reasons why I didn't go to a school out of state or a private institution. I didn't apply for more scholarships or other programs. I think I didn't want to be, I wanted to be far enough from my parents that they didn't have access to me, but close enough that they were still
the safety net.
The safety net. And I think it was an unconscious or subconscious trend that just stayed within me. And even now, within my 30s, and this might be real for a lot of people, I am petrified of like leaving the state to work for another institution or a bigger institution, or to be in an environment that I'm not used to being in. And it's really real for me even now. And I don't know, I do a lot of reflecting and a lot of therapy, but it's something I just can't, I don't know how to shake it.
I think it's what I said, when you look back on your life and you're like, why was I so afraid of that? It's like, even for me, like going to college was a scary experience because no one in our family went to college. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I got there and I was like, well, what do we do? And other people, like my roommate, her sister went to our same college. So she knew what to do. And then there are other people in their family had gone to college, and they kind of knew how to navigate that. And I look at it now, I'm like, I really was lost and did not have a clue what I was doing, but it turned out well.
And you made it.
Yeah, so I'm like, could I go back to that now? Because now I have enough knowledge to know you didn't know anything and you should have been afraid because you knew nothing. But there I was, it was one of those, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to swim.
Isn't it true that we don't do that often enough to go back and think about?
Yeah, we don't.
Especially for like we're kind of in the middle or the muddy part now. We don't go back enough to think about what all the things we have accomplished. We don't think about the fact that we survived college or we broke certain generational curses or
moved away from home and got a job at a place where, the first job, I was 22, moved away from home.
Yeah.
I was 8 hours away, so it's not like I could come home in a day if things went kind of wonky. Didn't know a single soul. And so now people will say, like, so you moved away from home and you didn't know anybody? You moved to a strange city? And I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of how it works. And so looking back on it now, I'm like, well, maybe that was kind of brave. I didn't know enough to be fearful about that, that particular episode in my life. But what was there to be fearful of? Nothing. I mean, I was away from home. Okay. I didn't know any people there. I met people. So there, this was in the 80s, and I still keep in touch with people that I met in that first job.
Wow.
So there was nothing. It looked scary. I didn't know enough to be afraid. Yeah. But looking back on it now, what was there to be afraid of? Nothing bad happened to me.
Literally, it's a rational fear, being afraid of what you don't know yet.
Yes.
Even though the unknown can unlock amazing things. And or it could also cause you to fail. You could mess up. Mm-hmm.
But what if I have? I looked at it now, and I think the thing about that first job did scare me. It was not being away from home. It was not being in a city where I didn't know anyone. It was a fear of, what if I can't do this job like I think I can? Yeah. And then they fire me, then my career is over. What do I do? Yeah. Well, yeah, that could have happened.
And that's scary.
But it didn't.
It's scary, but did you die?
Exactly. I tell that to people all the time. They'll get in a tizzy about everything. We do that a lot at work. Everybody will get, this went wrong, the newscast, blah, blah, blah. And I'll just look at them and I'll say, did anybody die? That's and everyone who knows me, they'll say that. I say that all the time. I'm like, did anybody die? And they're like, no.
Well, let's keep it going.
Is this a trick question? We had our family reunion in the summer, and we get to the family reunion, and the rooms were all messed up. And so when I finally got settled in my room, the person at the front desk called, we apologized, just apologizing profusely. And then the general manager of the hotel said, hey, I just want to thank you that things were crazy and you didn't get upset, blah, blah, blah. And I said, did anybody die? And so, because he didn't know me and we're in another state, we're not even in Central Florida where they're like, we know she's crazy because we know her. He just kind of paused and he said, excuse me. I said, did anybody die? And he didn't say anything. And I said, what I mean is, because of the mix-up, did anyone die because of that? And he said, well, he kind of laughed. He said, well, no. And I said, so it's not a big deal. I am now in a room. You didn't make me sleep outside.
Right.
My room just wasn't ready. You brought me my luggage. I'm in my room. My room is very nice because you upgraded me to a nicer room. So everything is fine.
You might have taught him something in that.
So he was astounded. He goes, well, that's
true.
I really appreciate that. And that night when we went to dinner, the person at the front desk said, oh, excuse me, miss. And I was walking by and he said, thanks for what you said because we didn't get in trouble. He goes, but I like what you said about did anybody die? So that really, that's it.
I love that. How would you say you deal with, how do you bounce back? Resiliency is really one of those things that you need, that when you fail, you can bounce back and have that kind of mindset. Well, no money died. Let me keep trying. Some people don't have that. What do you say makes you resilient?
You just do. I mean,
have you always been like that?
I think so, because I was such a stubborn child. I think, that really is, and anyone who knew me as a 5-year-old will tell you I was very stubborn. And I think I still, people listening to this, or my friends are like, nothing has changed, because you still are. Sometimes you just have to do. You can wallow in your misery and feel sorry for yourself. That's fine. I'm all for that. I'm not one who, setbacks and stiff. No, sometimes you need to just cry and scream and be mad at the world and say everything is unfair and why does it happen to me? And then you get over it and you just move forward. So it's okay to be in the valley there of pity. Yeah. Just don't stay there.
Don't stay there. I love that advice, because oftentimes, even as Black women, we're not taught to feel the emotions.
Oh, you must.
You have to push it deep down and to keep going. But
no, you need to let it out.
You do have to have the moment where you feel it. But your advice of just don't get stuck in it. That's the important part. And I think either we do one or the other. Either we just get stuck in it, or we don't acknowledge it just to be able to move on. But there has to be leverage between both. The moment where you do experience it, but you still have to pick up the pieces and move on.
Because when you internalize too much of it, that's when it comes back on you in terms of health challenges. When we wonder why we have high blood pressure and stroke and why we have mental illness, sometimes we internalize too much.
Yeah.
But again, don't stay there.
You have to move on.
You have to move on.
Oh, but so many people put it in there. We literally embody it to move on. Like the stress, we eat it up.
Yeah, you can't do that.
That's great advice. Like I said, I didn't want to have therapy right now.
Like I said, heart work is hard work.
Hard work is hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that resiliency part is so important. And I think also having, you're not so afraid when you have normal expectations, right? That you understand that life is kind of like Pandora's box. You know, things can work out or it can't. If you are so hyper focused on this is my only way.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
It's so dangerous. If this doesn't work out for me, everything falls apart. But in reality, isn't it true that there are different paths to get to the place you want to get?
Exactly.
Or it's a winding road or whatever the analogy is. It might not look exactly the way you want it to look, but you can still get there.
And I think we do a lot of that in our careers, especially.
Yeah.
Like if I don't get this promotion, this will be the end of the world. Well, you didn't get the promotion. Did the world end? No. Again, did anybody die?
No.
You're still here. You just figure out another path to get there. You know, it's. I have a lot of friends who are working in industries, and I think I feel this way sometimes too, when we feel like we've been overlooked.
Yeah.
Make them notice you.
I don't want to have therapy right now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, you figure out, like, make them notice you. And for me, it's always like, oh, okay, you were stupid because you didn't give me the promotion. I'm going to show you that you made a big mistake. And I'm going to make you wish that you had given it to me, because I'm going to show you what you lost.
That's you being stubborn
Yes,
against
that's it.
Against,
like, oh, okay.
Let me show you.
Okay, well, you're going to regret not giving me this promotion. And my work is going to show you that you should have given it to me. And you'll be sorry. It's kind of like, again, it's a 5-year-old, nah. But sometimes it's my professional nah.
Yeah. No, it's so encouraging because up until a couple of years ago, I didn't have a voice, like an inner voice to kind of draw me to that. So when things didn't happen for me, I would just, you know, I didn't even have the language to talk about myself in a positive way. So I always went to, I must really suck, or wow, I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or whatever. But if I had reframed the way I thought of myself and had that kind of mindset of, well, okay, you didn't want to give it to me now, it's not my time then, that means there's something better for me and I'm going to show you. It would have made a world of difference even 5 years ago, you know, let alone when I was in my 20s. So,
but sometimes it's rather than saying, I didn't get the job because I suck, maybe sometimes we should say, they suck because they were too stupid to give me the job. Maybe that's it. Like, I love that. I'm fabulous. They're idiots. Like, what do you mean they didn't give it to me? That. Like, you are stupid and dumb, and I can't believe you suck. You didn't give me the job.
If we did that more often, I mean, can you imagine the place of empowerment, position of empowerment would come from?
That's what it is.
I love that.
That's what it is.
And I think that's so true. Right?
Yeah, that's it. Now, we were at the Women of Power Summit maybe 2 years ago, and Donna Brazil was here when it was held in Orlando. And I just remember she said in the workplace, she goes, you have a voice, use it.
Use it.
You know, she says, everyone's talking about, oh, I need another position where I have more power, or I need more power, I need more authority. She was like, no, you don't. You already have what you need. Use your voice.
Yeah.
You're not looking to have more of a voice. You already have a voice. Yeah. Use what you have.
Or people waiting for others to advocate for them when they're not in the room. Don't even find your voice.
Yes.
Totally agree.
And use it.
I had a question and I can't remember. Oh, shoot. I just lost it. What happened? Oh, yeah. We'll cut this out. It was something about... I wanted to... Something you just said.
We were talking about using your voice. We were talking about people are stupid when they don't hire you.
I think it was something to do with, I know I wanted to hear your story. Oh my gosh. I just lost it.
You'll think about it like at midnight.
Yeah. And I'll be so agitated. I'll text her like, But so, do you feel like, I don't know how honest you want to be on the show or whatever, but Is there a story in particular you can share where you felt like that you failed like you felt the worst when you failed, like it was the hardest thing to overcome for you?
I think for me it has been not moving up as quickly as I thought I would in my career. And so sometimes when I look at it, I'm like, well, I am stuck right here. And so I think for that, that's when I've had those moments where, okay, I'm going to wallow in this I'm going to give myself a time limit.
Yeah.
But then I don't know what to do next. I just know I'm going to do something next.
That makes me think of too, like so our conversation has really been focused on lateral movement in our career. But I mean, dealing with fear and failure, it's a transferable skill in any part of our lives. And I think even as Black women, our narrative from a young age is you need to get married. Well, our technical producer is like, that was not my narrative.
Well, I think maybe it's a generational thing.
It might be
too.
generational and
it's a generational
cultural
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my mother is both a baby boomer and Jamaican. So from a very young age, also like a religious connotation, you should be married by, 30, at least got kids or something, or a divorcee. And a lot of our identity is wrapped up in that narrative. And a lot of our the way we even think of ourselves is wrapped up in that narrative. So I wonder how often women even think about life like they failed at life because they didn't get married or they didn't have kids by a certain age, and how often they do wallow in that instead of finding that self-love to just pick it up and go.
Oh, I think that is a big issue, especially for women who are African American, Black, women of color, in general, that they feel like my personal life has been a failure because I didn't get married or I didn't have kids, whatever. I think all of us at some point have gone through that, like, oh, wait a minute, like, and we still live in a society that I always say discriminates against single adults. Yeah. And so people will look at me and like, okay, here she is on her whole. And I'm like, no, it's true.
It is
because
so true.
They will look at you like, oh, never been married, doesn't have any kids. She must be crazy.
Yep. In the dating world, I get that. Yeah. Like, what? You ain't got no kids?
Right.
What happened?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a cultural thing. It's a societal thing. It's the whole discriminating against people who are, I am one of those who believes that not everyone needs to be married. And I think that's true because if that is not the case, we wouldn't have 50% of the population being divorced. Right. So either they shouldn't have been married or they shouldn't have been married to the person that they got married to.
That's something I didn't learn until recently, actually.
Yeah. So I just, it's, you got to deal with the whole self.
Right.
Yourself.
Right.
And so I think we need to be putting our effort into that more.
Imagine a world where you are taught to focus on education, get a good job, be a respectable member of society, pay your taxes, buy a home, and then, which requires you to do that by yourself. Like if you do what the narrative tells you to do, to focus on your education and get a good job, that doesn't include getting married. I mean, by the timeline, you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden you're supposed to just get married, like it's supposed to happen like that. But imagine like the world you live in with that, and then realizing, oh, I missed something or I messed up. I thought I was doing what you told me to do. And then immediately feeling like a failure because you're not what others, say that you should be. That is really toxic.
And that's what drives people to like just, how do I put this? Marry any old thing that comes along. I was trying to, I really was trying to be like very professional and... You're not going to invite me back, are you?
Wait a minute. I don't think there was any other way to say it. So I'm so happy for you right now.
That's just what it is.
No, I agree. And it's a toxic narrative to say delay marriage because this is the stuff you have to do first, but you just need to get married all of a sudden. Then you end up with any old thing
that comes along.
And then, but also like the way in which we, you know, I was just talking to our producer earlier, the importance of self-affirmation, that when you fail, you can still say things. I still love myself. I'm still smart. I'm still beautiful. I still matter. Because sometimes when you're down in the valley, you're by yourself.
Yes, you are.
You might depend on people to pull you up, and sometimes they're there. A lot of times they're not.
And sometimes it's helpful when they're not, because they're not speaking crazy things into your life and in your ears. So sometimes you need to listen to yourself.
Shania said, I felt that. Vanessa, you preaching?
I might be. We're going to take up an offering at the end of this.
Wow. She says sometimes it's good that they're not there.
Yeah.
Y'all heard us? Podcast land. Write that down in your journal. Because that just spoke to me. So
yeah.
I'm about to text somebody later. It was good that you weren't there anyway. But then going back to if you are by yourself, you know, do you have the inner resources to tell yourself the things that need to be said and to find that resiliency that you personify to get back up and to keep going?
Yeah, it is, you know, like I said, it's hard, but sometimes you just have to do it. And sometimes it is as simple as getting out of bed on a day when you want to stay there and just putting 2 feet on the floor and getting dressed. And it's like, I don't know if I can make it through this day, but at least I got up. At least I tried.
Brush your teeth, put your shoes on, and go outside.
Yeah. And
conquer the world, because they suck, you don't.
Exactly. That's, if I write a book, that's the title.
So, do you have any advice for a younger generation? They are like living in the worst social climate. The competition is crazy. And, you know, there are a lot of things to be afraid of for them. And they might lack examples where they can see people bouncing back, what resilience looks like. So do you have any advice for our young people?
I think, you know, when you look at people and you think they have it all together, you need to realize everybody has had some challenges and everybody has had some failures. I don't care how successful they are. You know, if you're looking up to anyone famous and you're thinking like, oh, they run the world, they rule the world, everybody's had some failures. Everybody's had some setbacks. Everybody's had some moments when they felt like, oh, can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? You know, all those things that talk to your head. So, you know, my advice is don't think that everybody's got it all together, because no one has it all together. They may want you to think that. They may look like they have it all together. They don't. And the other thing is, don't let fear hold you back. You know, I always say, run toward the roar. Don't, you know, you see the lion, run toward it. Now, I'm not saying be reckless with your life and put your personal safety in danger. That's not what I mean. But when there are opportunities that you want, don't let fear hold you back from them. Run toward the roar. You know, I had an old boss who would always say he would look for people who, when they saw problems, would run toward them to try to solve them, not like, ooh, there's a problem, run away. And so I was like, that's it. That's run toward the roar. Do it. It may frighten you and you might fail, but at least you tried. But what if you don't fail? What if it turns out to be the game changer for your life? What if it turns out to be your success story because you didn't let fear hold you back?
And if you do fail, consider the capital of the knowledge you're going to learn from that experience.
Absolutely.
So it might not even be a bad thing. I mean, like you're sharing with us, some of the greatest lessons you've learned was through your failures.
Yes.
Like no one could just show you a PowerPoint to tell you that.
Yeah, no, it's the things that didn't work out according to my time schedule or according to my plan. That's where I learned my greatest lessons.
So when you fail, seek that as an opportunity to learn and run towards the roar.
Yes.
I love that. I think that's great advice. And for our young people, I don't think they get enough examples of people that have made it, all the times they made terrible decisions.
Because they don't ask. You know, if they're in a room with 3 successful people and you sit them at a table and say, you get 5 minutes with all of these people, they'll always start the conversation with, okay, so like, tell me how you became CEO of whatever. Like, where'd you go to school? Where'd you get your first job? Maybe the question should be, tell me about the time you failed.
I love that.
Or tell me about the time that you had the plan, you had your 5-year plan, but it didn't work out. Tell me about your setbacks, because that's where you learn your lessons.
That is such good advice. And even if I had gotten that advice in college, I would have had my mentors. I would have had totally different conversation. So when you're young people, when you have looking for an informational interview or you have a mentor, that is great advice to ask the question, when did you fail? What was your greatest lessons when you failed? How did you overcome it? Because as Vanessa Echols is sharing with us, that was how she learned her greatest life lessons. I think that's wonderful. Thank you for that. And thank you, Shania. That was a great question. See, this is why I appreciate you. You getting the young folks.
Teamwork.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Miss Vanessa Echols.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate this conversation. I say this all the time, but I really did have therapy. Like, I have work to do when I go home. So your advice even reached me. I really appreciate it. Do you have any social media you'd like to share for our listeners to follow you at? Or
I'm everywhere.
Everywhere.
I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
And they can just type in Vanessa Echols,
yes,
and it'll come up.
And they'll find me.
Please follow her and support her podcast. It is wonderful. I'm not even just saying it because I was on it. It really is awesome. And please follow us as well. Black Women Be Well is on Instagram. It's at BWomanBeWell. And then you can also follow us on YouTube. Shania has been producing awesome video content. Black Women Be Well. And we're also on Facebook. So you guys have a wonderful night, and don't let fear deter you. Run to the roar.
That's it.
All right. Thanks, you guys.